Today I want to experiment with biscotti again. I've made several kinds in the past, but I've never made this one. This is something I thought up. Pecan Biscotti. And I'm doing this because I'm making this for some friends for whom I've promised some biscotti. The thing with pecans is that I don't like them, but if they're roasted, they're delicious. So that's what I want to use in my biscotti. And to explain biscotti a little bit, true biscotti is very dry and hard. It has to be dipped in something like coffee or tea or maybe sweet wine. If you've had biscotti that is tender and chewy, that's more like a cookie. It's made with oil in it. Biscotti came out of a time when they would need to preserve baked goods for travel so that it wouldn't get moldy while they were traveling. You get rid of the moisture, you dry it out, and then when you go to eat it, you moisten it again by dipping it in something. That's the kind of biscotti that I like most, and that's the biscotti that I'm going to make today. So let's make pecan biscotti. I have here about 45 pieces of whole pecans. I picked through the bag and I took out the pieces that looked the least blemished. These aren't broken. I'm going to be using these on top for decoration. And then what I have here is 10 ounces, 280 grams of pecans. These happen to be whole pecans, pieces, some of them, because they're broken. You can use pieces if you want. I'm using whole because that's what I have. I've been heating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 175 degrees Celsius. I'm going to put these on a baking sheet that I've lined with parchment paper, and I'm going to roast these for about 10 minutes. I have here 4 whole eggs plus the egg yolk from a 5th egg that I separated. I'm going to reserve the white. I'm going to use this for garnishing the top of my biscotti loaves. I'll be showing you that in a little bit. I'm ready to start mixing my wet ingredients. In a medium bowl, I'm going to put 1 3/4 cups, that's 350 grams of sugar. And then again, these are my eggs. That's 4 large eggs plus the yolk from a 5th egg that I separated. And then I'm going to put in I'm going to use vanilla extract. I know each of these is a 1/4 teaspoon, so I need 4. You can experiment with different flavorings. I think among the extracts, what would be good in this could be anise, hazelnut extract, orange, almond. I'm going to mix this up, get this all blended well. Alright, I like the looks of that. So now I'm going to be adding a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then this is 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And get that all blended in. And those are my wet ingredients. I have here 4 cups, which is 20 ounces, or about 566 grams of all-purpose flour, to which I'm going to add my wet ingredients. Like so. And I'm just going to combine these until it's mostly mixed together. I've got kneading to do, and that'll really finish blending this. My pecans now have cooled down to the point that I transferred them to my food processor. I'm going to chop these down to the point where most of them are reduced to something close to a fine powder, but there are still chunks in there that'll add some appearance, some texture, some interest to my biscotti. And then, as I always do, I'm going to use a little bit of plastic inside the top so that my lid doesn't get dirty. One less thing to clean. So there are my chopped pecans. I used pulse to reduce them down fairly fine, but there are a lot of chunks in there. As I said, that'll add some interest, some texture to my biscotti. Returning now to my dough, I'm going to add my chopped pecans, and I'm just going to knead this in because at this point it's so dry needs to be forced in, and it's going to be sticky. That's how it is. But that's the fun of making biscotti. Okay, I've got all of this combined. It's all kneaded, put together. I got to clean up here, and then I can start shaping my loaves. I divided my dough in half. I'm going to start shaping my loaves now. It helps to wet your hand a little bit when you do this. You get a little less sticking. In the meantime, I lined a baking sheet again with parchment paper. What I want is a loaf that will be about as long as my baking sheet. So there now are my 2 biscotti loaves. I'm ready to start decorating. That's the egg white that I reserved and set aside. I put about a tablespoon, maybe 2 teaspoons of water in there. I have a pastry brush here, and I'm just going to brush the top of these, mostly down the center, with this egg wash. And then these are the pecans that I set aside, the nice looking ones. And I'm putting them at an angle when I press them into the dough, because I'm going to be cutting the biscotti at an angle. And I'm positioning them really close together because these are kind of large pecans. And I want to make sure that my biscotti aren't too wide, too thick to eat. I want to tell you too that this dough, if this biscotti tastes as good as the dough tastes, these are going to be great biscotti. If you're someone who likes to eat cookie dough, you probably won't get this far. You'll just sit and eat the biscotti dough. It's delicious. So now I have all my whole pecans on top. I got 20 on this one, 19 on this one. I could probably squeeze one more onto the end down there, maybe a little one. Then I can have 20 and 20. And 20 actually gives me the right thickness that I like for biscotti. So now returning back to my egg wash, I'm going to cover the whole thing well with egg wash, including the pecans. Make sure I get down in between. So now these are nicely coated with egg wash. What I have here is 2 tablespoons of raw sugar. I like this for garnish because the crystals are kind of large. So I think they make a pretty crystal look on top of the biscotti. Try to distribute this evenly among your 2 biscotti loaves. That's good. This is now ready for the oven. Once again, I've been heating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 Celsius. I'm going to bake these for 35 to 40 minutes. So here are my 2 biscotti loaves now, fresh out of the oven. They expanded beautifully and they're just starting to brown. I have in the meantime lowered my oven's temperature to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 135 Celsius. I need to let these cool for about 10 minutes, then I can slice them. These have cooled for 10 minutes. You want to slice these while they're still soft enough to be sliced. That's for nibbles. And as I mentioned when I was placing these pecans at an angle on top of the loaf, the purpose was to slice at an angle so that each piece of biscotti has its own little pecan on top, and that's what it looks like on the inside. It's still quite soft, but you can see the pecans in there, the pieces. That gives it some texture and some interest. So I have 2 loaves here now to slice, and then I can start drying them. So there are my sliced biscotti. You want to arrange them with some airspace in between so that they can dry out. As I said, I've reduced my oven to 275 degrees Fahrenheit, 135 Celsius. These need to go through a second baking now for 40 to 50 minutes to completely dry them out. Here now are my dried biscotti out of the oven for the second time. So now these I have to wait until they're completely cooled. I'm going to start a cup of coffee so I can taste one of these and see how delicious it is. Okay, I have my coffee ready. I have one of my biscotti. I know how this is going to taste because I tasted the dough, or at least I got a hint of how good this is going to taste. All right, let's see what I got here. You can probably hear the crunch over the microphone. It's sweet without being overly sweet. You can taste the pecan. You can taste a little bit of the vanilla. Very, very delicious biscotti. So excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy my coffee and my pecan biscotti. Finally, I want to show you how I'm going to package these up to give them away as gifts. I have some poly tubing here and a heat sealer. I use this a lot. A heat sealer. Gonna cut it off before the seal. Now I got a little plastic pouch. I'm gonna put 4 biscotti in there, like so, and put that back on my heat sealer, like that. Seal it. And I have a little pouch of biscotti that'll stay fresh until I give them away as gifts. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit my website, mobilehomegourmet.com, and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.